In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create this composition that you see on your screen. The models that we used to make this composition came from our model project available on designandmake.com. After we get done looking at how this was created, I'll go ahead and show you how you can add some customizable text on this so you can make it your own. Design and Make is not only just a store where you can purchase thousands of CNC-ready, professionally created models for your next CNC project, but also it's a place to get inspiration. If you look across our menu bar here, you're going to see our shop notes posts, which describe our hacks of the week, show off what our customers are doing with our actual content. You can download some free software, which will help you cut very basic parts and will allow you to view for free all of our 3D content in our store. And if you're really ambitious, you can go ahead and download the plans to create your own desktop CNC. Let's have a quick look at the store. When you arrive in our Design and Make store, you have a couple of different things you can do straight away. If you know exactly what you're looking for, you can just search the store and we'll give you all the results that match your search. You can have a browse through our individual model shop. You can have a browse through our project shop, or you can go ahead and view our whole line of products. In this case, we're going to take a look at our project shop, but I do encourage you to come back when you have some time and take a browse through our individual model shop. Also, if you do choose to purchase something from our store, it's important that you do set up a Design and Make account for free, and with that account, you're going to get some free content that you can go ahead and cut or use in your own projects. Let's take a look in the project shop. In the project shop, you're going to find small, curated packs of models. And these models are put together sort of in a theme-based manner so that you can go ahead and create many layouts from a small selection of models. If we go to our food and drink section and you look for the wine bar number 1 project, you'll be presented with this page. And this is a standard page that all of our projects have associated with them. And in this case, we are going to give you a version of this project so that you can follow along with this tutorial. So if you did purchase this project, you would receive all 6 of these individual models. You would get this assembled layout that we created for you that's highly customizable with your own vcarving. It's a layout that we made while we were testing out the models that we felt that our customers would really appreciate and use. You'd also get this project sheet, which you can print out, put in a binder in a folder, and keep it for inspiration later, maybe to show somebody who doesn't have a PC, or maybe a way for you just to kind of get inspiration on what you can do with this project. And to take that one step further, we've also taken the models, the individual models in this project, and created some layout ideas for you so that you can see where this project can take you and the power of us giving you the individual models. Something like this is a beautiful little layout, and same with this, I could see this on a cheese board. Now also, because we give you the individual models, you can go ahead and mix and match them with your existing content in your library. And when you do that, we call that a hack. And in this case, we use some of the models from this project and we add it in an extra banner, and you can see what a great layout we have. Now, as I had mentioned, we are giving you a version of this project for free. And it's only a version, it's only missing one bit. And the bit that it's missing is the assembled layout, because in just a few seconds, I'm going to show you how to make this on your own. So let's go ahead and do that. Before we get started, I'd highly recommend that you make sure that you've downloaded and installed the tutorial files that go along with this video. That way you can follow along. I'm going to open up a brand new, fresh version of my Vectric software, and I'm going to create a brand new file. The job setup for this is going to be a single-sided job. The job size will be 24 inches by 12 inches in height, a thickness of 1 inch. We're going to zero off our material surface. And for me, when I'm creating a layout, I like to have my datum set to the center of my job. And then when I go to create my tooling, I'll move it to where I need it to be in order to cut my project properly. And of course, you can do exactly the same if you'd like. So for now, we're going to leave it in the center. I want to make sure that I choose an appropriate modeling resolution for my job. And seeing as I'm using 3D content, I want to make sure that's turned up as high as I can get it. And in this case, it's very high. And I'm going to click OK. Now, if you'd gone ahead and purchased this project from the Design and Make store, then it would have been delivered to you as an installer. When you double-clicked on that installer, it would place all the clip art where it belongs in your default Vectric clip art library. And then it would show up automatically in your clip art tab. Let's have a look at that. So let's click our clip art tab. You'll see we have a clip art folder. And this is where all of the clip art that you would have downloaded with your software would go. And in the Design and Make folder is anything that you have purchased, for instance, model project or model collections that you've downloaded and installed from Design and Make. And currently I only have one. That's the wine bar number 1. If there was more, they'd all be listed here. And then this would be populated with all of the content that these folders offer. If I wanted to narrow it down just to what one project has to offer, I can just click on that particular folder and you'll see only that. And in this case, we're looking at the contents of the wine bar number 1. We've got the assembly, all 6 individual models, and the project sheet that goes along with it. Now, if you downloaded the pack that comes along free with this tutorial, then this would all be exactly the same, with the exception you wouldn't have the assembly there. And that's what we're going to learn how to create in this video. But for now, we need to get our clip art showing up in our clip art tab. Now, in order to do that, we're going to need to add a folder. And we'll need to navigate over to where the tutorial has been installed. So for now, we're going to go ahead and just minimize all of these different folders so that we can get to the root of this. And this is what it would look like if we just started out from scratch. So we're going to go ahead and drop down this PC. We're going to go to our C drive. We're going to look at our users. We're going to go to our public folder. We're going to look in our public documents, into our Vectric files, into our tutorial files. And I've got all kinds of different tutorials installed here for all kinds of different versions of our software. But I'm specifically looking for the one that I downloaded and installed, which was for vcarve Pro V11. Yours might be under your own software's name. It could be vcarve Desktop V11 or Aspire V11. Drop that down. I'm looking for Design and Make. So I'll scroll down a little bit. There it is right there. Drop that folder down. I'm going to select the wine bar number 1 folder and click OK. And you'll see that now I have a folder added to this list. It used to be just clip art and Design and Make, and now it's clip art, Design and Make, and wine bar number 1. And there we have the contents of the tutorial pack that we've given you, less the assembly like I pointed out a moment ago. The first thing I like to do is take a closer look at the project sheet that came along with this project. And you'll see we have a thumbnail of it right here in amongst all of the rest of the clip art that came along with this project. So there's a couple of different ways we can look at this. We could double click on it and bring it right into our job, which is really great, and that works really good. But if we wanted to actually print this out, we can't print it out easily from inside of our job. So what we could do is we could right click while hovering over top of the project sheet thumbnail, open containing folder, and that would bring us right over to where that project sheet is located on our PC. And I could simply double click on that and it would open up into your default image viewer. And you could go ahead and print it from here if you want to have a paper copy. For me though, I'm just going to close this down and close that down. And I'm perfectly happy just viewing it inside of my actual job. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to select that and I'm going to slide it off to the side of my job so I can have it there for reference if I'd like to in the end. Now, when I double clicked on that bitmap, up under my layers menu, there was a brand new layer created, and that's where the bitmap is going to be housed. I can show or hide that if I would like to. And that way, if I don't want to see it, I don't need to. But for now, we're going to leave it on and we're going to zoom in on it. Now, of course, when the bitmap is not selected, it's going to be not as bright as it is when it's selected. So I'm going to reselect it so we can have a closer look at it. There's all kinds of good, useful information here for us. There are some silhouettes here of all the different models that we get with our project, along with their proper names. There's some great ideas for different layouts. And of course, in our case, there's a copy or a simulation of the assembled layout that we're going to try and recreate as best as it can be done in this 2D form. Okay, so we take a closer look at this layout, we'll see from the back up, we've got the barrel top, we've got the engraving plaque, and then on top of that we have our wine glasses and our wine bottle. And off to our left and our right, mirrored, we've got 2 sets of grapes and a grape leaf. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead now and start to build up this project in our job. So we're just going to go back over to the center of our job space, and we're going to start out with the barrel top. So I'm going to double click on that. And as soon as I do, it's brought directly into the center of our job, and it is selected. And because it's selected, we have all of our transform handles exposed for us to use if we would like to. And also, if we tile our view top to bottom, you'll see that in our 3D view, we have the actual barrel top showing here as 3D content, and we can go ahead and have a look around that. Now, what we're going to want to do is to lay out our project the best we can and make sure that it fits within the material thickness that we have, which is 1 inch. So that's going to be the maximum thickness that we can have. Ideally, we like it to be a little bit less than that, so any thin areas would have some material on the back that we wouldn't touch, and that way it would thicken up the project for us. So we're going to keep that in mind as we're laying this out. So because, like I said, it's selected, then we have both in our 2D and our 3D view our handles showing up here, so we can make any kind of adjustments or any transforms we'd like to do. What I like to do when I'm working with a project like this is I work very organically. I work visually, I place things where I like them to be, and then afterwards I fiddle around with them to get them to fit into my material thickness better. And you're probably going to see a little bit of that along with me putting in some very specific numbers for you, so that way you can follow along and you're pretty reassured that you're going to get something close to what I come up with. So first of all, let's just maximize our 3D view. If I hold down my Shift key, I can grab this corner control handle and I can scale this up and down from the center out. That's because I have my Shift key depressed. Okay. If I don't have my Shift key depressed, then you'll see what happens. It actually scales it out. I can pull it from that corner towards that corner of my job. And I can hit Control Z to undo both of those transforms if I would like to. For right now, what I'd like to do, I like to set this to a specific size. So with that selected, I can go to my drawing tab and I can choose either set selected object size, or I can press T on my keyboard. For now, we're going to just go ahead and choose to set our size using the icon in our drawing tab. We are going to scale selection. The scale space is going to be our job alignment box. And we're going to scale from the center out, and we're going to make sure that our height is going to be just about 10 inches. And because our X and our Y is turned on, then it'll adjust the height appropriately to match. I've got Auto Z Scale turned on as well, so that way the thickness of my model will scale up as it gets bigger, and as it gets smaller, it will thin down, and then I can just click Apply. And there we have the size I'd like to have the actual barrel top to be in this layout, and we can close this down. The next thing we're going to want to do is bring in the wine bottle. So let's go back to our modeling tab and then our clip art tab, and we can take a look at our wine bottle. Let's double click on that. Brings it right into the center of our job. There's a few things I want to point out here that are going to be quite helpful for you, especially if you're new to this. If I zoom in on that wine bottle, you'll see first of all that it's highlighted red because it's the selected component. And there's a green shadow around it, and that's where the actual model is merging into this barrel top, and they both share the same space. And then of course we have our barrel top in the background. If we go to our modeling tab, you'll see that we now have 2 components. We have the barrel top and the wine bottle number 1. I can hide and show the wine bottle, or I can hide and show the barrel top if I would like. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to pull this wine bottle up through my barrel top so that I don't see any green here. But before I do that, I do want to position it where I think it needs to be. So let's go and have a look at our 2D view again and take a look at our layout that we're trying to achieve right here. And I can select that if I would like. And you'll see the top of the bottle is kind of peeking out above the top of our wine barrel. And it's a fairly decent size. It kind of hangs below the bottom of or below the center point of that wine barrel, if you kind of visualize that where it is. So we're going to go ahead and pull this back a bit. Zoom back over. We'll tile our views. And we can reselect our wine bottle by clicking on it, and then we can click it one more time, and we get our control handles. So let's hold down our Alt key and drag up to right around here somewhere. Then we're going to hold down our Shift key, and we're going to size it up to be just about the size that we want it to be, keeping in mind that, remember, the top of the bottle, as we can see here, kind of needs to peek over the top a little bit. And then also, if we kind of extrapolated the rest of the circle, it should hang down below the center. And hey, you know what? That's not too bad right there as it is. Now, the next thing we're going to notice is that we have our top of our wine bottle is merging into the border of our barrel top. That's not so great. So let's see if we can adjust the actual properties of this component, and so we can avoid that problem. So we're just going to choose the spanner here to change our component properties. It's the spanner or the wrench icon. And you'll see that I can go ahead in here and change the shape height or add some base height to this particular component. So for now, I'm just going to add a little bit to the actual shape height. So 0.45 of an inch, and press the space bar for the software to accept that. And then I can add a little tiny bit of base height just to kind of push that out just a little bit so the top of this isn't tucked in so far into the top of that. And we can add maybe 0.25, press the space bar, and that looks pretty good, I think. We can just click anywhere here in the job space to unselect that, and we can twiddle around this to see what we have. And that looks pretty nice, I think, in the end. And we can look straight down on that. The next thing we're going to want to do is add in one of these wine glasses. Let's close this down. Again, we're going to go over to our clip art tab and find the wine glass, and we'll double click on it. And we're going to move it to where it needs to be in our 3D view, somewhere around here. And we can rotate it a bit to kind of get that nice angled look that we have. I might need to size it down a little bit. Also, I'm trying to keep in mind if I had a wine glass and a wine bottle sitting next to each other, what the relative heights would be or the relative size would be of each, so they don't look too funny. I think that looks pretty good. And again, we're having the same problem where our wine glass is merging into our barrel top and we can't see the stem. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can figure out how much shape height and base height we might need to add to this. First of all, if we off-click and we roll over top of any of our relief here in the 3D view, you'll note down here in the bottom right, we can actually see a Z thickness of our model that's underneath, or the area that's underneath our pointer. So you can see around this area here, it's about 0.1 of an inch. So if I added 0.1 of an inch of a base height to this glass, I bet you it would pop up and be proud of most of that detail. So let's select that. Let's go back to our modeling tab, have a look at our properties for this, and we can add a bit of base height to it. 0.1 of an inch is what I thought. Press the space bar, and we should see that in our 3D view, that's pretty good. There's some spots that don't actually work out for us, but I'm not too worried about that because in a minute, we're actually going to do something with this wine glass that's going to help avoid those areas anyway. Now, because we actually have two wine glasses in this, I'd like to kind of visualize what it's going to look like with both glasses in there. So I can close this down. And when I have this selected so I can see my actual transform handles, I can go to my drawing tab and I can use the mirror selected objects tool. And what I can do is I can flip it about the center. I can create a mirrored copy and I can flip it horizontally. And you'll see what happens. Now I have two copies of my wine glass and I can see whether or not it's actually laid out the way I'd like it to be. And that looks pretty good, I think. Let's close this down for now. The next piece of clip art we're going to need is going to be our engraving plaque. So let's double click on that. And we're going to hold down our Shift key and we're going to size this up. As I mentioned earlier, you can size these up holding down the Shift key from the center out, or I can, without my Shift key held down, I can go ahead and squish this if I'd like to, which is kind of nice. There's some things that don't transform very nicely with this. For instance, when I'm actually doing that, you'll see that this will actually get wider or thinner where the outside edges don't. So sometimes you can get away with a little bit of that, but sometimes you can't. Now in this particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to type in some numbers so that we know exactly what size this should be in the end. Again, mainly so you can follow along and get this right or pretty close to being right. So in this case, instead of going over to our drawing tab, we're just going to press T on our keyboard and you'll see we get the same set size dialog opening up over here. And we're going to go ahead now and change that to be 18 inches wide. And we're going to turn off our link X and Y. And we're going to make this be 5 inches tall. We're going to click apply and then close. And then we are going to select that and we're going to move it down to where it belongs. If I hold down my Alt key while I'm dragging it, it'll drag it nice and straight. And that's about where I want it to be. I want it to be so that it looks like once I get the shape height all worked out, that it's actually going to cover up the bottom of that barrel. So I'm just going to get that down there a little bit, something like that. And now let's have a look at how we can get that to be proud of the barrel top. And again, we know how to do that, but I'm going to show you a slightly different way to get to your component properties. With a component selected, with the transform handle showing, you'll notice that there will be a solid square. You can just go ahead and click on that, and that will bring up your floating properties dialog box. And this gives you access to a basic set of component properties, not as many as what you would see in your actual component properties over here, where these pertain mostly to what you see in the 2D view, or you set these based on the 2D view, especially fade and tilt. These all work right in the 3D view, and seeing as I can't see my 2D view right now, or I've chosen not to, then this is probably the best way for me. So now I can go ahead and add a bit of base height to this. Let's just go ahead and add 0.1, press the space bar. It's kind of coming through. Let's make it 0.15. That's not too bad. Let's make it 0.175. What I'm looking at is this area right here and just trying to get it so that it looks reasonably nice and merges nicely, or is slightly proud of that. I think that looks really good right there. And we can actually leave this floating properties dialog box here. When I off click my component, it goes blank because there's no component selected. But if I decide to go ahead and select the component like I want to, which happens to be this wine bottle, then you'll see that it shows me the properties for this particular wine bottle. So now what I want to do is I actually want to use our tilt feature here so that I can leave the top where it is, but tilt this up so that the bottom of the wine bottle is actually proud of this engraving plaque. So if I select the tilt option, I can then go ahead and set my 2 anchor points. So I'm going to set my first anchor point here, which is going to tilt from here, or this is going to be the axis of tilt. And I'm going to go down this way, and this will actually be the high point once I tilt it. Now I can go ahead and put in a degree in here, 1 degree. We're going to press the space bar and you'll see what happens. Now it's easier to see from the side. If I go ahead and add in, let's say 1.5 this time, you can see it's slowly tilting up. And the idea is to get it to tilt up so it doesn't look funny from the top down, but looks really quite nice. Let's make this 7.5. And I think I'll be happy with that. Let's look straight down again. And that looks pretty good. Now I want to do the same thing with my wine glass, but if you remember correctly, we actually mirrored these. So if I just adjust one and then re-mirror it again, you'll see both will be exactly the same. So let's just go ahead and delete this one, select this wine glass, and we are going to go ahead and tilt that, set our 2 points from there to there, and let's give it 1.5. See if that does what we need it to do. No, let's make this 2.5. There, it's coming now. Let's make this maybe 4. And you'll see that slowly coming through. Now, unfortunately, with this particular shape, there's absolutely no way that I can get the stem to peek up above this engraving plaque without having to add a ton of tilt, which would maybe end up having this bottom of my glass being very proud of my wine bottle, and I don't want it to be that way. So the best way to do this might be to reduce this down to 3 and then add some more base height to this to get it up higher. So let's make this 2.5. That's looking a little bit better. Let's make this 3. And that I think will be all right. because I'm not super happy with the way it's connecting with the bottom of my wine bottle, if I choose that or select that wine glass, I can use my cursor keys and nudge it over just a little bit, maybe adjust the angle just slightly. And I'm pretty happy with that. Let's look back down on our composite model. That looks pretty good. Now with that selected, I can do the mirror if I'd like to. So let's go to my drawing tab and we're going to mirror that back over again. Again, we have flip split our job center, create a mirrored copy. I'm going to flip horizontally, and there we have it. And we can close that down. Now let's have a look again at our 2D view tiled. So we have a look at what we need to do next. So the next thing we need to do is have a look at our grapes and our grape leaf. So let's just go ahead now and go back to our clip art tab and bring in to start with our grapes. Let's double click on that. And you'll see that when it comes in, it's set as a merge component. If we look at our modeling tab under our component tree, so we really can't see it very well, except for we have this handy green silhouette that we can see. So I can grab that and we can actually place it over here on the side. And I can rotate it and I can size it up appropriately to what I'd like it to be. This is all very subjective on how you'd like to have this look in the end. I'm pretty happy with it like that for right now. And I see there's another set of grapes here. So let's just go ahead and make a copy of it. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with it selected, I'm going to hold down my control key and I'm going to drag it. And when I hold down my control key and drag it, I'm going to create a copy of it. And that's perfect, exactly what I like to have. Then I can press H on my keyboard to flip it horizontally. And there I have it flipped the way I like it to be. And then I can go ahead and rotate it around and put it in the spot where I'd like it to be. And I think I'd like to have it something like this maybe. Don't want my grapes to peek up through my barrel top. Let's just go ahead and size this down a little bit. And maybe size this one down a little bit too, just so we can get it in there better. Rotate that around a bit more. Again, I like to work very organically, so I'm just trying to position these visually where they look good and they don't disturb any of the other components that I have in my layout, or at least in ways that I can't easily correct. And I think that will do it right there. I just want to make sure I don't have a gap right there. So let's just rotate that around like that a bit. And that way I can get rid of that gap and maybe scoot that down just a little bit. Somewhere like that. So I get the crossing of the stems. Now I like the crossing of the stems to be a little bit more exaggerated. I don't want them to run into each other. So to do that, I'm going to simply select this component and you'll see that now my floating properties dialog box has been populated with this information from this particular piece of clip art. I'm going to tilt it again. Set my 2 anchor points. This time I'm going to set one down here, my other one here. That way I want it to angle from here to there. That's my axis of rotation. And so then I can go ahead and change that to be 1 degree. Press the space bar and you'll see now it's poked up proud of that other stem and it looks pretty nice in the end. I like that. Let's look back straight down on our layout. Now, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in our grape. Now, I'm going to maximize that because I might need to make a couple little adjustments. So we'll have that maximized. It makes it a little bit easier to work with. Let's go to our clip art tab and bring in our grape leaf. I'm going to pull my grape leaf over to where I think it belongs. We might need to just size it up just a little bit. Tuck it in here a little bit. That looks all right. Again, we're going to use our tilt. Set tilt so we can have the front of that leaf come over top of our plaque. And let's make that probably not 15, 1.5 would be great. Let's go maybe to 2. And again, we're going to run into the same problem we have with our wine glass. We're going to need to add a bit of base height to this. Let's make it not 1 inch. We need to make it like 0.15. Maybe a little bit higher. 0.2. 0.25. There we go. That looks pretty good. Even though there's a little bit of that green showing here, I'm not too worried about that because overall, once it's all cut, you're not even going to notice that. And I think that that looks pretty good. Now, just having a look at this straight on and thinking about it mirrored, I can see a couple things that I'm not really super happy with. One is that I can't see this other set of grapes in behind here because my leaf is covering it up. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this leaf and I'm actually going to move it over a little bit so that I can see a bit better that set of grapes over there. I think that will be all right. Yeah. I can see that. I can see there's a few grapes there. There's grapes off the side here. If I wanted to, I could actually size this up a little bit now if I want to. And again, we're just going to rotate it just a little bit so we can try and get rid of that little hole that's there. There we are. That's pretty good. I like that. Maybe I can just nudge it up just a little bit so I get kind of a hint of a grape in there. There we go. That looks pretty good. I'm very happy with that. And let's do this. Now what we're going to need to do is we need to copy these to the other side or mirror them to the other side. And there's a couple different ways we could do this. But for this very basic tutorial, we're going to do the same way we did it with our wine glass. We can go to our modeling tab and we're going to choose all of the components that are over here. So the grape, holding down my control key, I'm going to select the grapes, this grape's here, and the grape leaf. And then I can go over to my clip art tab, or sorry, my drawing tab, and I can mirror that over again, flip out Job Center, create a mirrored copy. I can flip that over. And then we can get a good sense of what we have. We can close this down, and that looks pretty nice. Now, in order to be sure, we're going to need to actually lay out our text on here to make sure everything fits in here nicely. So let's close this down. Let's go have a look at our mirrored, not our mirrored, but our tiled version of this. And you'll see that we have our 2D bitmap representations here are showing off all of our components that we have. Now, they're not quite layered up like we'd like to see them, so we can lay out some text in here. Now, it's important to keep in mind that these bitmap representations of your components as displayed in the 2D view do not affect how or the result of what you see in the 3D view with respect to how they're stacked up in your 2D view. So you can manipulate these as much as you want with respect to the stacking in the 2D view, and it won't adjust your 3D view at all. For instance, I need to move out this wine bottle and this wine glass so they're proud of this engraving plaque so I can lay out my text. So I'm going to select this. I can right click on that and I can say move to front. And then when I off click that, you'll see it's now in front of my stack of bitmaps. I'm going to do that with my other wine glass here, move to front, then off click that and it's in the front. Now I'd like to, even though in the 2D view, these grapes here are proud of the engraving plaque, in the 3D view, they're not, they're actually behind. So that's a perfect example of what I mean by the stacking of the bitmaps in the 2D view do not affect your 3D view. So right click on that and I can move that to the back, off click and do the same over here, right click and move to back. And I like to take this one here and I'm going to move it to the back as well. And I'm going to take this one here and I'm going to move it to the back as well. So now we can clearly see the space that we have available in our 2D view where we can put some V-carving text without running into any of our components. So let's maximize our 2D view for a second, press F on our keyboard, and we're going to use our scroll wheel to zoom in on our job here. Now, just to be sure we get this laid out properly, we actually should take a look at our project sheet. So let's just scoot over there for a second. So we've got this word vintages in here. It's all in uppercase and the V and the S are actually larger than the rest of the letters. So we're going to keep that in mind when we're adding in our text. And again, we are only creating a close facsimile of what we see here. It's not going to be exactly right. So we can go ahead and change things as we'd like to in our actual own layout if we'd like to. Let's have a look at our text. And let's type in the word vintages. There we go, vintages. That's right. And we're going to drop this down. We're going to choose our font. Now the first 5 fonts in your list are going to be fonts that you've previously used, but we haven't used the font I would like to use, so I need to go find it. So I can just press L on my keyboard, and I'll be brought down to the L's in my list. And looking for Lucidia Bright, we're going to click that, and you'll see my fonts automatically changed. We'll change that to bold, hold down our Shift key, and make that as large as we can. And then hold down my Alt key and drag it down. And that's where we're going to fit it for my sign. Okay, we'll close that down. Select it. We're just going to size it down just a little bit so we can now have some room to make the V and the S larger. But before we do that, we actually want to fix our spacing of our letters here. So let's go over here to our Edit Text Spacing. Select that. And as I hover between my different letters, I can left click. And in this case, it's going to bring my letters closer together. If I hold down my Shift key, I can actually add some space between my letters. I'm looking for gaps that might be a little out of sorts or not enough space to leave enough material to actually stand up. I think that looks all right actually in the end. Some fonts that you get aren't spaced out really well for CNC work, so you need to go in and kind of fix those and make them right. And that looks pretty good. Now that I have that done, I actually want to make the V and the S larger. So in order to do that, I need to convert this all into curves. So with that text selected, right click on it, and I'm going to go convert to curves. And then I'm going to hold down my Shift key and I'm going to unselect the V and unselect the S. Right click again on that pink line, and I'm going to group those vectors back together again. So now I have a V, an I-N-T-A-G-E, all as one thing, and then an S. Now, it's important to remember that these aren't fonts anymore, so you can't adjust the spelling or anything like that. It is how it's going to be, and so we're going to need to actually work with it like that. Now we can take this V, and we want to transform this, both the V and the S, the same. So if we go over to our actual set selected size dialog again, we can change this to be, maybe the height is going to be 2 inches maybe. We want to make sure we set our X and our Y together so they're scaled together. Hit apply. That's pretty good. Let's do the same with our S. Make this 2 inches. Hit apply. Close that down. Then we're going to use our cursor keys just to nudge these around a little bit, just to make sure there's enough space there for us. And I like the idea of bringing the vintages down back to where it belongs along the baseline here, and that looks pretty nice. We'll scoot it over. Select all of that. Right click and regroup that back together again. And now I can go ahead and just scale this up if I'd like to as a group. And then nudge it into place so I get nice spacing between everything, especially the tip of the V and the tip of the S. I think that looks pretty good just like that. Let's go ahead and tile our views again. If we go ahead and hide our bitmap, we don't need to see that anymore. If we retile again, you'll see that everything gets sorted back out in the center. That looks really good. Now, if I was going to show this to a customer, I might want my 3D view to look a little bit nicer, so I can go up and change my view to be the actual, with the view selected, I can go up to view and use my shadow shading. And you see I get nice shadow shading around my actual components. Now with that shadow shading turned on and comparing it to what you see in your 2D view, you can tell that you've got ample room for your vintages text or whatever custom text that you want to put in there. Now let's keep in mind, like I had mentioned before, at least a couple times in this video, is we were just trying to come up with something that was reasonably close to the assembly that you would receive if you purchased this project. And so if we go back to our modeling tab for a moment, and then go down to our clip art tab, if we look at our design and make folder again, and inside of our wine bar number 1, you can see that there is the actual one that you would have received with the full project, which is slightly different. You can see that the grape leaves are a bit smaller, but this certainly illustrates the power of having all of the individual components that go into making assembled layouts. So if you need to actually create your own layout with one of our design and make projects based on the assembly that comes with it, you can easily make a bespoke layout to fit almost anybody's needs, any kind of name, or even a house plaque or whatever you'd like to put on there. And if you did need to make these leaves smaller because you've actually put it together on your own, you can easily just scale those down and you've got what you need, maybe adding in a little bit more tilt in there to get everything sorted out. Well, with that, that concludes this tutorial. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I really would recommend that if you get a spare moment to poke around the Design and Make store and see if you can get inspired to make a really nice project.